Oh, I see Doug Murstein joined us. Let me just bring you in real quick. And I will keep an eye out for David as well. He's ready. Okay, Meredith, Kara, good to go? Yes? All right. Kathy, you let me know when we're up.
Just waiting for Andrew to text me that we are live.
No problem.
We're live.
Yes, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So good morning, everyone. I'm once again Raul Fernandez, Select Board Member and Chair of the Small Business Development Committee. I am joined by other members of our Small Business Development Committee, as well as town staff, including Meredith Mooney and Kara Bruton from Economic Development, who you'll be hearing from in just a bit. I'm also joined today by special guests. We have Representative Tommy Mottola, who you'll hear from in just a bit. And the representative will give an update on pending COVID-19 relief legislation on Beacon Hill, followed by a brief Q&A session. We're also joined by Doug Marstein and David Gladstone, folks who you may know. Doug Marstein is a CPA and founder of an accounting firm based in Coolidge Corner, which specializes in small business consulting. And of course, David Gladstone is a business banking development officer at Brookline Bank, and he'll give us a lender's perspective on the Paycheck Protection Program. We'll also close out the meeting with a Q&A session with Doug, David, and economic development staff. I just wanted to provide one brief update for you. We're sort of right in the middle, like the peak time of the curve of this virus, as it were, at least here in Massachusetts. And we just received a directive from our Director of Health and Human Services, Dr. Swani Jet, and this is a very important directive. And so this was just released yesterday, and it is effective starting April 17th. So the Brookline Department of Public Health has been pleased with the level of compliance and cooperation from all local businesses during this COVID-19 public health emergency. In order to better address health and safety concerns, the Commissioner of Public Health issues the following notice. Effective April 17th, 2020, every individual is required to wear a protective face covering at all times when in public. I'll say that again, effective April 17th, tomorrow. Every individual is required to wear a protective face covering at all times when in public. He also updated a previous order regarding businesses. He says all businesses deemed essential under the state order, which was on March 31st, must follow the following requirements. All establishment staff must wear protective face covering, gloves, and eye protection during all service in the establishment. All establishments are required to install temporary plexiglass type barriers at customer service counter areas. All entry doors must be posted, advising customers that face covering and social distancing, 6-foot separation, must be maintained inside and outside the establishment. Establishment staff must supervise and enforce this requirement. And establishments must increase employee illness surveillance by 1, continuing to ask if staff have been exposed to COVID-19. 2, ensure employees don't come to work while ill. And 3, take a daily temperature reading of employees at the start of each work shift. Daily surveillance must be recorded by staff, noting employee and position. Local businesses not adhering to these requirements will face fines. So I wanted to share that with you. This is or will be shortly on our COVID-19 website, which is brooklinecovid19.com. I suspect we'll be hearing more from Dr. Jet on these requirements shortly with some more details. But the bottom line is this: is he wants to make sure that all of us are doing our part. The businesses which have been deemed essential, which are allowed to remain open, that this is about worker safety. As well as about the safety of people who are shopping in these establishments. So it's really important. And then this other call, I'll reiterate once again. He has directed all of us when out in public now to wear some type of face covering, preferably a face mask, a non-surgical face mask, of course. or some other type of face covering. And once again, that's to protect everyone else as much as it is to protect ourselves. So your compliance with this directive is much appreciated. So I wanted to offer that. And during the Q&A session, I'm happy to respond to any questions about this as best as I can. This is a new order that came out yesterday, and I'll be sort of asking some questions myself about this and how we operationalize it. So just know that. So without further ado, I want to launch into our first guest speaker, and this is, I'm going to spotlight your video there. This is our representative, Tommy Mottola, with some updates on the legislative side from the state. And then I believe Tommy will be taking a few questions if you have any. I do want to remind you at the very bottom, you'll see a list of icons. One of them is Q&A. And so if you have questions, that's the place to put it in. So even while the representative is talking, feel free to type your questions in, and that way we'll be ready to roll right into Q&A when his remarks are concluded. So Representative Mottola, take it away.
Sure. What I'm doing first is typing my phone number in the chat, 617-872-8921, and my email, so that tommy.votolo@mahouse.gov, so that everyone knows how to contact me if we don't resolve your interest right now, or if something comes up later. You should always feel free to reach out to me. And for those watching at home who can't see the chat, again, it's 617-872-8921 and tommy.votolo@mahouse.gov. So I got a bit of a cheat sheet next to me with some issues that might be of interest in particular. The first relates to SD 2888, if the number, I think that's the right number, which is the potential for legislation requiring business interruption insurance to cover the pandemic, and indeed perhaps retroactively. This bill has been filed. My sense is that it is unlikely at the state level. And the reason is my back of the envelope calculations tell me the insurance companies don't have that kind of money. The total amount of business interruption, right? If we're talking even 30% of the economy over 4 or 6 weeks, that's a huge amount of money, right? And I don't think the insurance companies have it, certainly not at a state level. And they're not designed to have it. The business interruption insurance is designed to cover an individual business or even a cluster of businesses if, God forbid, a fire or some other local disaster damaged a block or even a community. That's a whole lot different than covering everybody. And so my sense is at the state level, you can't squeeze a whole lot of water out of a stone, and the money's not there in the insurance companies. Furthermore, there's this question of retroactively changing a contract between parties. Because of SARS and Ebola, many insurance companies rewrote the details of the coverage to explicitly exclude exactly this kind of thing. So that doesn't mean that nothing can be done in this area, but my sense is ultimately it's a federal issue, not a state issue, because the federal government has the ability to inject money into the insurance companies, but the federal government has the ability to, frankly, to print money. So if we're going to see something like that, my instinct is that it's going to happen at the federal level, not the state level. The second question was about increases to employer unemployment insurance contribution rates. And the good news is S2618 has been enacted and it's put into law, and sections 2 and 3 of that document are explicit that benefits paid to that individual under Chapter 151A shall not be charged to the account of any employer, nor included in the calculation of an employer's experience rate, so on and so forth. So I don't want to read all the fine print, and I'm not going to swear exactly how this impacts every business in every case, but the big picture is employees who were laid off because of COVID-19, that will not impact the unemployment insurance rate, which is great news and really a matter of fairness. There was a question about commercial rent relief. We're going to do residential rate relief 2 hours from now. Specifically, both tenants and mortgagees are going to get residential relief today. The House and Senate passed different bills. They've been conferenced and they'll go to session today. I'll be there to vote for that. And the long and short of it is that tenants can't be evicted, and that failure to pay won't show up on your credit report, and that if your inability to pay is related to COVID-19, landlords cannot charge late fees or interest, and that the last month rent, so-called, that many tenants pay can be used to fill in an interim month if that tenant doesn't have the ability to pay. For mortgagees, foreclosure is prohibited and forbearance is required without interest or fees. Now, my expectation is the House and Senate will pass that today. Then it goes to the governor to sign or veto. I haven't heard the governor say anything about it publicly, so my expectation is that he will sign it. But again, all of this is residential. What does this mean for commercial? My instinct is it means nothing for commercial. If it was going to happen, I think it would have been in this bill, and it's not. And so the bad news is, if you have a lease or even if you have a mortgage for a commercial establishment, I don't think that the state is going to do anything to affect that. The good news is, you can not pay your rent or your home mortgage and dump it in your business for a while. That's cold comfort, I know. And of course, I encourage every tenant and every mortgagee, call your landlord, call your bank and explain what's going on and try to work out a way to make it through. But not really positive news there. I don't want to pretend it is. There was a question about the potential to extend property tax deferrals beyond June. I think this is worth considering. I think there may be something here. The challenge is cash flow to local governments and to state government. Recall that local governments tend not to have a whole lot of cash lying around and have to make payroll. And state government deferred income tax as well as meals tax and lodging tax by several months. And so the state is going to be looking tight on cash soon. Now, if the federal government sort of provides some liquidity to states, or if state government does have enough cash and enough people are paying their taxes early, which is to say within the next several months, there may be enough liquidity. And if there is, I think it's something that makes sense to provide for towns. What's nice about deferring property tax is bankruptcy almost certainly doesn't eliminate that revenue. So as long as the town can access other cash in the meantime, it can wait on collecting the property tax. If the tenant goes out of business, then the lien falls to the property owner. If the property owner can't pay, then the lien is collected when the property is sold. It might take time, but there's very little risk that the town won't ultimately collect that revenue. And that's really important because it gives the town more flexibility, more opportunity to defer these payments. So I think that's worth looking at. I will have some conversations today and in the week to come to sort of explore this. It's hard to know exactly what the need will be, and I certainly don't know yet where we are in terms of cash flow at the state level or the town level or any of the other 350 cities and towns. But it does seem like something worth exploring. And then the last question I have is about the existential threat confronting many chambers of commerce, which are, of course, unable to access the federal relief program. This one's a little tricky, right? Chambers of commerce are trade groups. And so it's hard to imagine direct funding. Furthermore, there's a wide variety of local and regional and larger chambers of commerce that have taken very different public approaches. And as a result, not every legislator is as interested in being a supporter of chambers of commerce, because some of them don't behave in ways that the legislator finds reasonable. And so right now, everything the legislature is doing through unanimous consent. A single objection prevents a bill from passing. And so if there's a single rep or a single senator out there who has a bad taste in their mouth related to a chamber of commerce, that could sink the whole thing. And that's imaginable. And it's not a reflection on the Brookline Chamber of Commerce by any stretch. But I think we can acknowledge that there are other chambers of commerce that are more aggressive or otherwise more challenging to work with for some reps. So I think there's an opportunity, though, and I think it's going to require some cleverness. And so, Debbie, if you have ideas, or if anyone else has ideas, let's talk offline about it and see if there's a way we can figure out how to be supportive. There may be something we can do through the legislature, but I think it's gonna be a little tricky. I don't think there's appetite for supporting a trade group of any kind. I think that would be seen as a pretty poor move. And we have this funny relationship where almost everyone certainly loves locally owned small businesses, but people have various amounts of distrust for larger and larger businesses. And since chambers of commerce tend to represent both, or at least some chambers of commerce represent both, that becomes a challenge. Those were the 5 bullets I had and wanted to work through. It's a mixed bag. I acknowledge it's not great. And I know it's frustrating. So I'm happy to answer questions now or later. And if anyone has ideas for other ways that state government can be helpful, as you know, I'm a member of the Joint Committee on Small Business and Community Development. The chair is Ed Coppinger, who represents South Brookline and West Roxbury. So you've got a lot of friends in the legislature. The key is for us to be talking and figure out what we can do that we can get through the legislature that would be helpful. Happy to take any questions.
All right, so we've got actually 3 questions in here right now. Let's try to see if we can get some quick answers to them so we can make sure we move on to our other speakers by 9:30. So the first one's from Ellie Dunford. Says, landlord is threatening to issue eviction if rent and triple net not paid in full by 20th of April. We've been making payments, but not in full. We've been in good standing for 18 years, commercial.
Give me a call, 617-872-8921. I'm happy to try to help. I don't know exactly what my office will be able to do to help, but we certainly are happy to try. To my knowledge, well, I don't want to talk too much about the details. I don't think your landlord can issue an eviction on April 20th. So
Tommy, can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
Okay, Dave Gladstone, Brookline Bank. Most commercial owners are trying to work with their commercial and regular customers, whether it be residential or commercial. honestly, you should have a conversation with them and tell them this is not normal times and that a lot of area commercial owners are working with their clients. If not, then you need to go and possibly speak to your lawyer just to get some ideas.
Thank you, David.
Okay, we have another question, and this is from Puppet Show Place Theater. The MCC has reported that the mass arts and cultural sector has lost $250 million already. What initiatives do you suggest arts and cultural orgs support? How can we advocate for investment and recovery in this sector?
That's a great question. Thank you. You may also know that I serve on the Joint Committee of Arts, Culture, and Tourism. So this is another one of my interests. The arts are really broad, and we consume arts in a very broad and diverse way. And so I'll start with the hardest part, right? So frankly, what may well be the last thing in our economy to reopen is the Coolidge Corner Theater, right? I mean, that's the most number of people mixing in town in a small space. And so as we, when we get over the curve and we're past peak and we start to relax the restrictions, my instinct, I don't know, but my instinct is that large gatherings like a movie theater will be the last to open, but or the ballet or the symphony, right? These sort of performance-based, or a rock concert, right? These performance-based activities will open last. Arts that have fewer people in one place will be able to open sooner. And I think that retail art, for lack of a better phrase, right, will be able to open sooner. That tends not to have as many people mixing. And so I think what I'm hopeful MCC is already thinking about is how to guide the governor and how to guide government about what can open up in what order. So when we, in the first round of businesses reopening, it won't be all of them. Which arts should be reopened and why? And to lay out that plan will be really helpful, because really what we need to do is get artists performing again, get artists displaying their art again, and frankly, get them selling their art again, get them getting paid again. Some are still able to get paid, right? You can imagine folks who can work from home creating art, particularly digital art, but everything is down with a poor economy. In terms of investment and recovery, I think that the most direct thing that was done was allowing 1099 employees to collect unemployment, right? That was the most direct way to help artists. That doesn't necessarily help art organizations. And that's the next question, is how do we help small businesses or nonprofits that are centered around art? And I don't know, short of let's try to make sure that the ones that can safely open sooner are able to, and let's continue to promote the arts. I think people are really hungry for arts right now. There's only so much Netflix binging people can stand before they want a different kind of art. And so I'm hopeful that when things do open up, that places like Brookline in particular will be especially supportive. But it's going to take folks raising their voices about it. And so we'll have to do that. Let's keep moving though, because I know we've got an agenda to keep to.
Absolutely. So this is from Pablo, Representative Mottola. What is the plan for the legislature being able to vote on bills without requiring unanimous consent?
That's an excellent question. When you find out the answer, let me know. I know I'm being a little bit glib. I know that the building, which is to say both leadership and the information technology staff and security, are working on this. as not to say nothing of the legal folks who are trying to figure out if it's even legal for us to meet digitally, to vote electronically. If we have to, we can vote in person by sending all of the legislators to their offices and calling us down to vote several at a time. But the actual debate would have to move very slowly to allow any rep at any time to call the court officer, stop the proceeding, come down to the chamber, raise their objection or make their motion, hash it out, and then let other people come and go. So it'd be incredibly slow to do in person. And so the answer is we don't know yet. Folks are working on it.
So likewise, I mean, you'd mentioned before, Representative, about this great bill, no evictions, no late fees, no interest, forbearance with no interest or fees on the residential side.
Yep.
And I think you touched upon this, that, you know, I mean, is there no possibility at all that something like that gets passed on the commercial side? I know you mentioned it would have been in this bill, but is this something
there's always a possibility
you're fighting for, or what?
There's always a possibility. My instinct is that if this bill has gone this far, certainly it came up in conversation many times, and for whatever reason, there wasn't the appetite. So, but things are constantly evolving, and our understanding changes all the time, and so it's always possible that was a decision that was made 10 days ago, and since then things have evolved. To my knowledge, no bill like this has been filed for the commercial side. So the ball hasn't even started rolling officially. There may be conversations going on that I'm not aware of, though.
Okay. Is that something you'd like to hear from business owners about, if that would be helpful or not?
Sure.
Yeah. Great. Let's get one last one in here. This is from Michael. It's actually about testing. And can you give us, do you have any insights on
None.
On where we are with testing? No, nothing, huh?
None. And the hard part is that, in fact, it is our current inability to test larger numbers that will prevent us from starting to edge back to our normal daily life. The way that we come back is when we can do contact tracing. And so the idea is Tommy Mottola goes about his daily life and he starts to feel ill. He gets tested. Tommy Mottola, in this example, not in real life, in this example, comes up positive, and then immediately a contact tracer works with me, with the sick person, to figure out everybody who they've come in contact with over the last X days. And then every single one of them have to get tested. Well, how many people do I run into in a week, in a normal week? Hundreds, right? And so if we only have the ability to test 6,000 people a day, then we have the ability to test all the people that 20 people came in contact with in a day. And that's just not enough to allow folks to get back toward their regular life. And so we have to ramp up the testing. And it simply hasn't happened yet. And frankly, I don't know how much of that is because of federal government ineptitude or worse. I don't know how much of it is on the state. I have no doubt that Governor Baker is working really hard at this. I know that he understands how important this is. I know he's working hard on this. I don't know the details, though. And it wouldn't do me any good to know the details. I can't offer any substantial help there. The legislature is ready and excited to help if there's anything we can do. My sense is that at this point, there's not much that we, the legislature, can do to move it along. But I'm hopeful that we will start to see faster tests and, frankly, a higher ability to test more people per day than we can now.
Great. Well, Representative Mottola, we really appreciate your time and being with us today. And folks, you've got his info right there. His phone number is 617-872-8921, and his email is tommy.vitolo@mahouse.gov.
Thanks very much, Select Board Member.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. And so we have our other guest speakers with us today. Meredith, would you like to do the introductions?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I remember to unmute myself, making progress. So we have Doug Murstein and David Gladstone here to participate as sort of our small business expert panel. Doug, and I should also mention that both Doug and David are members of the Brookline Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee. Doug is the longtime treasurer and David is the current vice president. So they're very immersed in Brookline's business community. So we're going to turn it over to Doug, who's going to talk about his experience consulting with small businesses and his perspective as a CPA. Take it away, Doug.
Hey, so almost from the get-go, small business clients reached out to us about what can be done to help them in their times of letting employees go, furloughing employees, and ultimately shutting down, some sooner than others. The legislation came out quickly, and in the the way it was initially written, there were holes and there was uncertainty. And I think, generally speaking, they've done a good job addressing those holes. And the way it's being done, again, generally speaking, is based on the intent. And the intent was to help the small businesses stay alive, keep their employees, and provide for funding. In practical purposes, it's been problematic, but understandably so. The programs are just so large, administrating them and functioning them such that cash is deposited into these small business bank accounts is a tremendous, tremendous challenge. I believe it's something like 60 to 70 times any program ever done before. So the bankers and others are advising patience, but it's understandable why time is of the essence. We've helped a number of our clients first understand some of these programs, followed by helping with their applications and helping gather data. The reality is some of the data and the information that is now required, and initially was required by some of the lenders, was not available. The earlier businesses were able to apply, the better off they were. I hope that changes. I believe it will. My understanding is funding is actually about to run out. I'm not sure what that means with respects to whether banks will continue to take applications or not, but it is a concern. Again, my hope and what I'm speculating is that additional funding will be available. Now, whether that comes under the same program, an extension of it, or there's some changes, that's undetermined at this point. I will say some of the banks have done a better job than others. Some of the banks had their online capabilities up and running on April 3rd, which was the first day technically anyone was able to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. Others were able to roll out shortly after, and others were delayed. We have seen some clients get their funding for the PPP program. They are the few. So we're advising patience. I believe the way the law was written was the banks had 10 days to fund from approval. Hasn't even been 10 days yet, or it's just about 10 days now. So we'll see how that plays out. But funding is starting. The applications, the approvals have been significantly higher than the funding. So hopefully in the next week, and certainly two, we'll see significant progress on this front. Now, there are other so this generally, this information is widely disseminated, so I won't go into it now. And if anyone wants it, we have a summary pamphlet as well. I can email in PDF format. But the PPP is a loan program that allows for a significant amount up to the entirety of the loan to be forgiven if it's used for qualifying purposes. And qualifying purposes include payroll to a large extent, or it can be used entirely, but a smaller portion can be used for things like mortgage interest or rent if you're a business and you rent your facility or property, and utilities. The forgiveness, that application will come down the road. That is, again, function through banks. So for those that haven't sought it out yet, they need to seek out their banker. Initially, banks were working with their customers. David can speak more to this, but banking laws make it challenging to work with new clients. They need to know you. So that was one of the limitations that, again, progress has been made. There is another program. It is significant in scope. It is referred to EIDL as the acronym. It is a loan program that is functioning through the SBA. So for those that can't get, my apologies there, on my phone, cannot get their PPP program application or aren't ready or don't qualify, they can apply for a loan. Initially, that was set to provide for an advance of up to $10,000. Clarity has since been issued. It's based on employees, $1,000 per employee. So for small businesses, which I think is the lion's share of those on this call, and a number of our clients in the community, it's $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. I have not seen a single client get their advance yet. I've heard it's happened, but I haven't seen it. So the SBA has been a slow going on that, but that is a program that is large in scope. The advance is going to be forgiven, but the loan is not. The interest rates are different. The payments, length and duration, or the repayment period is different. It does make more sense for some small businesses to apply for the EIDL loan through the SBA. Generally speaking, though, the PPP program through the SBA is going to be better for most. Lastly, before I'll stop and let David or Meredith take back over, these programs are available for not just incorporated businesses, LLCs, or more traditional formal businesses, sole proprietors, self-employed people, 1099 miscellaneous freelancers are all eligible. The way we're explaining it is payroll and payroll equivalent. So if you work for yourself, your net pay, what you take home at the end of the day, is the equivalent to payroll. You do qualify under these programs. And I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you, Doug. So we're going to turn it over to David. He'll give us an intro and talk about his experience with the Paycheck Protection Program. And then we're going to do a Q&A session. So as Raul said before, feel free to start popping your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. David, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me in on the town-wide meeting of small business. In a nutshell, I'm going to give you a few numbers just so you get a sense of the scope of what Doug was talking to. Just to answer some questions about, not really answer questions, but say what Doug was doing and what he said. Totally on the mark. Money is flowing versus on the PPP program. I have originated 90 applications, and a lot of the people on this call I probably have dealt with if they work with Brookline Bank. To date, through last night, the SBA has issued guarantees or actual numbers to about $248 billion of the allocated $250 billion. A lot of banks have paused, so that means that they're not taking applications at this point. There was an email sent out today from the SBA commenting what Mnuchin said yesterday, that the SBA has done 14 years worth of lending, 14 years within the last 2 weeks. It's an enormous amount of lending, and I can tell you all of your banks are under an immense amount of strain because of the need to be able to fund within 10 days of getting this SBA approval. This Saturday is going to be one of our biggest days with regards to getting out closing documents. We're getting closing documents out, and we are closing it virtually. And then we're requiring the 10 documents to be sent via FedEx to our main office. So that's very important. That's like at the 10,000-foot level. I've rated 90 applications, probably worth $4 million worth of lending at this point. One of the points I wanted to talk to is that there was a question about commercial rent, and there was a question about 3 months worth of grace. Most of your banks are working with their customers, and we are approving 3 months worth of deferments on loans, lines, and commercial mortgages. With our bank in particular, what we're doing is we're going to give you grace for 3 months, and then you'll have up to 24 months after that on the 4th month through month 24 to be able to pay back. And basically, we're going to divide what you owe by 24 and add that on to your monthly repayment on top of whatever you were paying originally. With regards to forgiveness is going to be a maze, and you need to read and understand what is required to get the forgiveness. The banks are required to validate that you've done everything that you committed to, and that you spent the money according to what you committed to and gave for information. You're going to have up to 10 weeks. 80% of the money you get is going to need to go towards, 75 to 80% is going to need to go towards payroll and headcount. You will have 20 to 25% to be able to pay mortgage or rent on your commercial business. And in that, you can actually do utilities up to 20 to 25%. No one has seen a situation like this in a long time, probably going back to the Depression. A lot of us have weathered the S&L crisis, the internet bust in 2000, the crisis of 2008, 2009. And I will tell you, not counting the Depression of the 30s, that I have never seen anything like this, and that it's going to be very important for you as a business person to be thinking about, as the economy and as things start to open up, how you're going to operate. I can tell you how you operated previous to January will not be the way you're going to need to operate once we get to open up partially. I've spoken to a lot of my clients, and I've told them to reinvent yourself and think about how you're going to need to operate. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients is a hair salon. They have 12 chairs. There is no way that they're going to open up and be able to do 12 stations going forward. In talking to this client, she had the idea, and I think it's a great one, that she's going to operate with 6 chairs from, say, 8 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. And then she'll have a second shift with another 6 chairs from 1 in the afternoon to possibly 8 or 9 at night. It's going to be imperative that you reinvent yourself. If you open up the same way you shut down, it's going to be a recipe for failure. And to talk to what Tommy said, you know, about theaters and about movies and about large venues, this is not going to only be true for them. It's going to be true for every single business. Think about this for a second. How many of us are going to go right back going to restaurants, going to gyms, going to bars, going any place where there's a lot of people? The answer is, for the most part, that will not occur. You have to scale back, and you have to think about that your people coming through the door is going to be scaled back as well. This is going to be a big challenge. Raul can talk to that. BU is now thinking about not opening up until January. Harvard may follow suit. Even schools, I mean, it's an unanswered question, but there's a lot to go. There's going to be a communication coming out grouped from the Chamber, from the CCMA, and from the Rotary Club, that the town health department will be doing a pilot on testing. More details to follow, but that is in the offing. And communication will not only come out from the town, but it'll come out from the Chamber, the CCMA, and the Rotary Club. Back to you, Meredith.
Great. Thank you, David. And thank you to David and Doug for joining us. I know that you're incredibly busy right now, given all of the phone calls you're receiving and applications that you're processing. So we really appreciate you taking some time to be here today and to maybe answer a few questions. So we do have a couple of questions teed up in Q&A. The first one is from Jen Mason at Kurds & Co. The up to $10,000 advance from the EIDL will be part of the PPP if you get both, correct? Apparently they asked about EIDL in the PPP application, but if you hadn't heard back, you couldn't put it in there. Do you think that there will be a change in the PPP once people hear about their EIDL?
I can tackle that. There won't be a change.
I'll take that, Meredith.
Oh, we'll let Doug finish.
No, there won't be a change based on it. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Assistance Program, I believe, came out first, but if so, only just prior to the PPP. If a business receives the advance under the EIDL, they will have the ability basically to roll it into the PPP. So let's say they're eligible for $50,000 under the PPP and they received a $5,000 advance, they would take out $45,000 from the PPP and thus qualify for full forgiveness. If they don't do them in tandem, technically they're not going to be eligible for forgiveness under the PPP.
David, do you have anything to add?
Pick up here is with the forgiveness. The forgiveness is going to be very important. And as I stated before, you're going to have to follow the rules to the letter, because the banks are going to come back and check to make sure, because they have to validate for SBA, whether you've done everything you committed to. You may want to go online to Forbes. There's an interesting article that came out in the last day or two just talking about following the rules and actually doing what you said. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
With respect to EIDL and the PPP, if a business gets both, again, that's definitely doable. I believe you'll have the opportunity at closing. If you're in the application process, you should have the opportunity at closing to make sure that they are handled properly, such that you're eligible for full forgiveness. They'll have to discuss that with your bank.
Yeah, but Doug, I want to say one thing. It isn't going to be a closing that this is going to happen.
Yeah,
it's going to be probably 2 months from now, where they're going to come back and check. And honestly, this is going to be big. That you have to make sure that you navigate this correctly, or it won't be forgiven. It'll turn into a loan.
Jen did have a follow-up clarification question. So Jen, I just unmuted you if you wanted to ask it live.
Yeah, so that was all great information. I think I was thinking more in terms of if there are, everybody I know who filled out the PPP has been talking about the fact that even though they applied for the EIDL, they couldn't say they got that. So I'm wondering if you, this is more philosophical or thought question, do you think more money will open up in the PPP once the EIDLs start rolling out and people find out they also have some of that money in the EIDL? Everybody I know has applied for both. So
right.
I'm just wondering if we think like the SBA is going to run out of money now, but once the PPP goes through, or are they just pulling from the same bucket of money?
Okay, that's a great question. When I've been taking in the actual applications, we're required, and it's required on the PPP, to ask whether you're doing both or whether you're just doing the PPP. If you're doing the PPP and the EIDL, there's a bit of a formula that they have to undertake, because you won't qualify for the maximum of both. There's going to be a blended amount that you'll be able to qualify for. And there's an actual certification if you're taking both. So that's it on that question. But to follow up on your other question, there is no guarantee right now that there's going to be additional funding. Right now, unless it goes through it's at the legislature, it's in Congress. And we have not heard anything coming out of there. So in the short term, the answer is no, there's no additional funding right now, but there could be later on. Most banks have paused, and most banks as of this time are not taking any additional applications. They're working through their applications, and now they're turning towards doing the closings by what Doug indicated, by 10 days after when the SBA number was gotten. And we're all working feverishly right now to get them out.
Great. Anything to add, Doug?
I don't think more money will be added based on a relationship between the PPP and the EIDL, but like I said at the beginning, I'm speculating that these programs will be extended in either the same format with additional funding or with some changes, but it's a legislative process. It will take a little bit of time.
Thank you. We have one more
Meredith,
question.
I want to add one thing. I'm sorry. I need to add one thing. Hindsight being 2020, if anyone, like if Tommy can communicate this on up, I think that in the future, if they're going to do a program like this, they need to take care of the sole proprietors and the 1099 people first and foremost before we're going to bigger companies. It was flipped. We were dealing with bigger companies and corporations and bigger businesses. And then a week later, on the 10th, we were able to start to take the sole props and the 1099s, and it should have been reversed.
Federal issue, but I think there were many flaws with this, but that's another discussion for another day.
Okay, and one more question from an anonymous attendee. I read a Wall Street Journal article yesterday, and it seemed that certain industries had higher probability of receiving the loan. Is that the case? Can the applicants whom already submitted the applications will guarantee the loans later? I submitted to Bank of America more than a week ago.
Okay.
I can reread that.
I'll take that one. I will tell you, of the 90 applications I've taken, a third of mine have been conditionally approved so far, and probably the vast majority of them are going to be approved. I range the gamut from food establishments, salons, insurance companies, real estate, you name it, I've taken it, and everyone is going to be treated fairly. There's not going to be a pause on people who have food establishments or bars or gyms. or anything like that.
I haven't heard anything about certain types of businesses receiving preference either.
Okay. So that was the end of our Q&A. I guess just to close out this panel, if you had anything to add in terms of what your recommendations are for what businesses need to be doing immediately if they haven't already done so. So Doug, do you want to add anything?
So again, these programs they're rolled out quickly. They're good programs. I think, if David kind of hinted, I think the implementation and the targets aren't ideal. I really think the small businesses should have been preference. I really think there should have been a lot more focus on getting these programs to those who are severely distressed, not just saying I'm a small business and it's a time of need, but that's the way it rolled out. So if that, again, in future rounds of stimulus, that may change. We are encouraging people to use somewhat of a moral compass, and it may even be too late for this, but don't apply for these loans if you don't need them. These loans are designed to help those in need. I will leave it there. Again, we have a good summary. There's a lot of information out there. Some is not right. Some is good. There's a lot of good information, but not all of it. So be careful what you read. Lastly, I'll say this. I haven't seen a lot about this yet, but I'm a little concerned about the potential for fraud where people are just clicking on things and giving sensitive information, trying to get money. So always be careful of what you are putting on the internet and who you're working with. I think we're going to hear stories down the road where people are having all sorts of issues, whether it's they're losing their stimulus checks or big issues where they're subject to some fraud. So be careful. Always be mindful of that. And again, we're open virtually. If people need help, please feel free to reach out to us. We're doing everything we can.
Great. Thank you, Doug. David?
Thank you, Meredith. I would say, number one, the key word is patience. Please be patient with your banks, your CPAs, and your lawyers, because we are inundated. Going back a week ago Friday, I've been working from 8 in the morning till 11 at night, keying in, pulling together documentations, packaging it up, and sending it to SBA underwriters. Just be patient, and it will come. I'm sending out, from my end, a lot of closing documents as we speak, and I'm getting them back. I'm sending them to our legal department, and then the money will go in up to 2 to 10 days after we get the 10 documents back.
Great. Thank you again to Doug and David. As David just talked about, they're both incredibly busy right now, drinking from the fire hose. So we don't want to take up any more of your time, but we really appreciate you taking the time to tune into our virtual town hall meeting. So best of luck.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So to
Good
close
luck,
out-
everyone. And also what Meredith was, sorry, go ahead, Meredith.
Oh, no. What were you saying, David? Oh, okay. So we're going to close out our meeting with...
All I wanted to say is the same thing as Doug.
Okay, perfect. So last week we had attempted to implement a poll just to get a sense of people who are participating, what federal programs, if any, you'd applied for, and if you'd received any funding from those programs. So here we are, we're at round 2. We're trying this again. So it's a simple 5-question poll. So if you could take a moment to fill that out, that would be very helpful. And while you are, I guess we should walk through the questions for people who are either calling in or watching on Big. So the first question, which state or federal small business relief programs have you applied for or plan on applying for? And there are several options. Second question, which, if any, of the following state or federal small business relief programs have you received funding from? Third question, did you have any trouble applying for the Paycheck Protection Program? 4, are any of your employees currently collecting or in the process of applying for unemployment benefits? And 5, have you sought relief or assistance from any of the following, including your landlord, your bank or lender, or your utility company? So we're getting some responses. They're rolling in. few more seconds for people to complete that. Okay. So based on these responses, before we end the poll, it looks like a lot of people majority of people who responded have applied for the EIDL as well as the advance for the EIDL up to $10,000. And almost everyone has applied for the Paycheck Protection Program. We have one person reporting that they've received their economic injury disaster loan advance. And it was a mixed bag in terms of whether or not people had trouble applying for the Paycheck Protection Program. About half said yes, half said no. Also mixed bag in terms of employees who are on or seeking unemployment benefits. And about half of respondents have reached out to their landlord seeking relief or assistance. About a quarter to their bank or lender, and only 1% of the participants in our poll have talked to their utility companies. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and share those results. People can have for reference. Thank you very much. That's helpful feedback. We've been talking a lot about these programs over the past several weeks, so it's just helpful for economic development staff to kind of start to wrap our arms around if our businesses are taking advantage of those. And final update, the building commissioner, we've been receiving a lot of questions from people who are asking about how they either receive approval for a temporary sign or asking questions related to temporary signage, which if you're still operating and wanting to get the word out about the fact that you are still open for business, there's high demand for that right now. So we did reach out to our building commissioner, made him aware that this was an issue or topic of interest for businesses in town. And as of Tuesday, the building commissioner is formally suspending enforcement of temporary signage in storefront windows. So we realize that people already have some temporary signage up, but in terms of applying for temporary signs, you won't have to go through that process as long as we're in the state of emergency, which was declared on March 10th. That said, the building commissioner did want to emphasize the fact that sandwich boards, which have always been not permitted in town, are especially not permitted at this time, as we're trying to make it easier for people to practice good social distancing. Putting a sandwich board in the middle of the sidewalk would come into conflict with that. And the other thing in terms of illuminated signs, if you're going to be installing a temporary illuminated sign, the recommendation and preference would for it to be a plug-in sign. If you do want to get a hardwired illuminated sign, the building commissioner says that you have to have that installed by a licensed electrician to ensure safety. So, and then the other short update is we talked about how the town is trying to figure out how to use our community development block grant funding, which is federal funding to support small businesses. And we continue to have productive conversations with our community development colleagues about that, and are hoping to have more updates and specifics on a program within the next week or so. So stay tuned for more info about that. And you will likely be seeing a posting in the tab about a public hearing about how those funds will be utilized as well. So are there any other last minute questions before I turn it back over to Raul? Okay, back to you, Raul.
Sure, thank you. And we'll close out here. The one last thing I want to say is a reminder about the Safety Net Fund, and that this is something that is available for our entire Brookline community, which includes business owners as well as employees of businesses in Brookline. And so that Safety Net Fund is set up through the Brookline Community Foundation. If you would like to contribute to it, you can go to brooklinecommunity.org and contribute to the Safety Net Fund. If you would like, if you're in need of support, or maybe some folks who work underemployed are in need of support, you can call 617-277-8107. Again, that's 617-277-8107. And they provide financial support to help you at this time. This is on the personal side with rent, food, utilities, a gift card to purchase groceries and other essentials during this time. The town has contributed $175,000 to that. The fund itself has raised from private donations since COVID began $158,000 and counting. So for those who can be generous and give to that fund, please do. But for those who are in need, financial need right now, please do not hesitate to reach out. That's why it's there. It's there for you. So please do give a call and talk to the good folks at the Brookline Center who expertly manage this fund and can get you connected to the resources that you need. I see Kara has her hand up and something to share.
I just wanted to add very quickly that the select board did take a vote on deferring not only the property taxes in town. So all the businesses should know that when they're talking to their landlord, that's a great excuse to call your landlord, is to say, hey, I wanted to make sure you heard the news that the Brookline Select Board did approve that state legislation locally. So all property taxes that were due in May are now not due until the end of June, which is the maximum we can defer it by state law. And also for our businesses to make sure that you all understand that same law that was endorsed locally is also true for basically any Brookline bill. So if you're paying your water bill, your sewer bill to Brookline, your trash bill, some of you are on the town trash system, and then also Eversource. For those of you that have cars excised in Brookline, the motor vehicle tax is all deferred until the end of June. And also the question we asked about utilities, take advantage of these things. Even if they're small, they do add up and may free up other cash flows for you. Eversource is automatically delaying payment due for your electric bill. And that's right on their website. They're eliminating late payment charges, and they're not disconnecting service. And they also have a flexible payment plan. So I just want to make sure people think about all of their cash flow bills and investigate those that make sense. Thanks.
All right. And with that, thank you very much to Kara, Meredith, and all the other town staff that are doing tremendous work day and night. We've been sometimes doing evening calls or texts or anything, making sure that we're getting the answers that you need to your questions. So thank you so much for all that you do. When folks are watching and even when they're not. Next Thursday, if it's Thursday at 9 a.m., it's a small business and nonprofit virtual town hall. So we'll be back next Thursday morning. Look forward to engaging with you in the meantime and definitely then. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Bye.